We'll go ahead and call the March 10th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting to order. Kim, can you go ahead and take attendance?
Yes. Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Commissioner Jackson? Commissioner Jay?
Here.
Commissioner Russell? Here. We have 4 members present.
Commissioner Russell, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I think our first order of business will be approval of the minutes from the prior meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
That was seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Our next topic is a recommendation regarding the Pew & Company state audit contract for fiscal year 2025. I believe Chris Caldwell is going to give us.
Yeah, it should be pretty quick. So we usually do this in April or May, but since we don't need it until June, we thought it was better to go ahead and get it on this agenda. It's just the audit contract that has to go to the state for approval, has to come from this board and then go to Duke County Commission. The law department has reviewed it and had no changes. So the draft you all receive is the same as the final draft, and so we just recommend approval.
I believe that was approved by law today. Is that correct? Review from it? Yeah, okay. With that, we'll need a motion to recommend it to commission, recommend approval of it to commission.
Motion to recommend approval. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
You.
Passes. And then with that, we can transition into the external audit update from Ted of QCPAs. I believe the primary piece will be the presentation of the single audit compliance report.
Correct, yes. Ted Hodes, QCPAs, Knoxville, Tennessee. I first want to go over the smaller document, which is really an audit and governance letter. And it's on the front of I believe it's labeled governance letter in the 2 documents that I sent. And also, by the way, I did not realize that all my communications in the past have not always gone to the audit committee. So I sent them directly this time and would make sure I send them directly in the past. I've sent them, I think that's kind of an attachment to the agenda, but something has gone amiss. Anyway.
Hey, Ted, I'll interrupt a second.
Yes.
I haven't been in a meeting in this room for a while, but I don't know that we're going to pick up much sound, so you may want to speak up a little bit.
It should.
Should.
Be fine.
All right.
Okay. But I'm glad you have the documents for today's meeting. Okay. The audit communication, or the audit governance letter, you go through until I think it's the 4th page in. It's numbered page 1 at the bottom of that page. And this is really required communications that are necessary from the audit firm directly to a governing body, in this case, the Audit Committee on behalf of Knox County. It explains what our responsibilities are as auditor, and they're kind of outlined in that exact state contract and addendum, one you would receive the prior year, but it will be similar in turn, really nearly identical to what you just see in what you just approved. Also, regarding plan scope and timing of the audit, we prepare a planning stage governance letter that normally is reviewed in May and June, and that's what that's referring to. So, reminder on that. Accounting policies and practices, I'm basically going through the bullet points of this. Accounting policies, management selected the preferable accounting practice. No new significant accounting policies were adopted during the fiscal year. There's appropriate guidance for all accounting policies used during the year. Management judgment and accounting estimate section. We do have a separate schedule regarding accounting estimates, which I'll go over in a moment, and audit adjustments and uncorrected misstatements. We're not aware of any uncorrected misstatements, and we have attached the audit adjustments that we made during the audit. On the page 2, other information included annual reports. That's really referencing the transmittal letter and statistical section that's in the annual comprehensive financial report. Observations about the audit process, no disagreements with management, no consultations with other accountants that we're aware of, no significant issues discussed with management, no significant difficulties during the course of the audit, and no difficult or contentious matters that require consultation. If so, we would be required to communicate that to you. Independence is important in an audit, and below it outlines what our responsibilities as the external auditor and what the county's responsibilities are. On page 3, internal control and compliance matters, and basically I'm going to say we're going to talk about these in a moment in the compliance report. Any findings or any matters that come up, the positive thing about this letter is that it will either talk generic in basic terms about any matter that came up during the audit, or it's going to refer to another document. In this case, with audit findings, it's going to refer to the compliance report we're going to go over shortly. And other significant written communications would include the representation letter, which is attached at the end of this. Significant accounting estimates are on pages 4 and 5, and there are, I believe, 5 of them listed. I'm not going to go through them, but it's important to realize an audit does include estimates, and this document outlines what the accounting policy is, how management has estimated, and what our basis for conclusion that is reasonable. And then on page 6 shows the recorded adjustments that we made, that we proposed and that the county made, and then page 7 starts with the draft of the management representation letter. So, are there any questions on this document? Then I'll move forward to the compliance report. This is labeled the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and state financial assistance and reports as required by government auditing standards and uniform guidance. Uniform guidance governs federal grants received. And this document includes 2 reports. First of all, the first report's it's on pages 1 and 2 on internal controls and compliance. And here we do reference the 4 findings that are later in the report. Pages 3 to 5 references the federal grants and or our compliance testing regarding the federal grants that we tested. And there were no issues with federal grants this year. Pages 6 to 15 list the federal grants by federal department, and they were roughly $56 million in total from Knox County alone, $121 million from Knox County for Knox County schools, with rounding a total of about $178 million. Plus there was $16 million of state awards, state grants, which are shown on pages 16 to 19. And then the rest of the report we're going to go over in detail. On page 22, it'd be PDF page 24, page 22 for me, is a summary of findings and question costs. You'll notice that under financial statements, there's a yes mark by significant deficiencies, and that refers to findings 1 through 4, which we'll go over in a moment. Also at the bottom, or near bottom, there's a list of 3 major grants that we tested during the year. So with that, I'll skip to page 23, which is the first of 4 findings. We had 6 findings a year ago. 4 of the findings have been resolved, and that's reported on pages, the summary is on pages 28 and 29, report pages 28 and 29. 2 of the findings from a year ago repeat, although they have been, they partially corrected is how we've labeled them, because there have been improvements in them. We'll talk about that in a moment. The bank and liability account reconciliations deals with the bank reconciliations between trustee trustee office and finance department, we became aware that several liability accounts were not properly reconciled. And let me step back. Each finding will have 5 sections: a criteria, a condition, cause and effect, recommendations, and management's response. I'm going to primarily talk about the condition, which is the basis of the finding, and open up for any questions. Again, liability accounts are not properly reconciled. Some of the liability account reconciliations contain listings of transactions for the year, but didn't identify the reconciling items at year end. Noted certain reconciliation differences of approximately $30,000 compared to the trial balance, and noted certain discrepancies in the prior years that have not been resolved yet and still showing on the reconciliations. And the June 2024 bank reconciliations had some changes through December of '24. With all that said, there's still the number of reconciling items that we had in liability accounts went down notably during the year. So there has been improvement in this area. And let me step back to kind of give some background why the liability accounts are significant. Because trustee's office holding cash for other departments. So instead of just having cash and having revenue or expenditure, it's actually cash and normally a liability, and then that liability is going to tie to another fund. Cash will be in another fund. So it's not as easy as just reconciling the bank statement. It's reconciling the bank statement and then comparing that, reconciling with the general fund and the capital improvements fund. So overall, still have challenges here. The manual reconciliation process or parts of it contribute to that, and then the activity when it's posted in Knox County Finance, the timing is also a contributing factor. So,
is this a new finding, or is this one that is?
This is one that's a repeat, but it's been partially corrected for a few years. Yep.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
just to clarify, I know you said the number of reconciling items went down. What about the total dollar value of the reconciling items?
They've gone down also.
Okay. I know it was marked as 30,000 here. I don't know what it was last year.
We got an answer for that.
Go ahead.
The 30,000 that's on there is actually the financial institution sent us a statement, and they had done an entry of withdrawal, which is done by state, EFT state, to pay the TCRS retirement plan, and on the statement they sent to us did not reflect that. So therefore, at year end, when it happened in June, it wasn't on there, so we reconciled, it was an outstanding item, but we have since resolved that, and they sent us a new statement to the exact amount that was out.
It's helpful.
And we had some other reconciling items that resolved over time. So.
Any other questions from others? Finding one?
Okay. The second item is year-end accounting and reconciliations in Clerk and Master's office. Again, I'll go to the condition. Basically, the year-end financial information that we will receive as auditors was not available until October, and then still was revised through December. Reports had certain errors, including cash reconciliations that were off. The net asset amount that was rolled forward, that was off significantly, is really a matter of certain accounts that were not included in that reconciliation. It wasn't anything missing, but still part of the reconciliation. And certain trust account balances were off by the bank balances by about $18,000. So this is a repeat matter. It results from, contributing factor is change in personnel in the administrative accounting office a year and a half, 2 years ago. One thing I will say is that I think Clerk and Master's office is on the right track, and I'm optimistic this is not going to be an issue next year. Had a good meeting with the administrative clerk in there, and I know changes are being made and reconciliations are getting caught up.
I was gonna ask, along the same lines as the trustee reconciliation item that was a repeat, has it gone down over the past year in terms of instances and total dollar
It has
value?
gone down, and in particular, I think they're much closer to having a handle on it in the time period of December through now, December 24th through now, than they were when they were starting in their roles. Again, we had a very positive meeting recently, and they seem to have a good grasp on it. So.
So I'm just trying to keep all this straight. Which ones are, I think we still have a couple to mention here. Will they be off this time next year, taken care of? Would it be?
That will remain to be seen. We'll certainly do our audit testing and follow-up on them. I'm optimistic, in particular, number 2 will be off next year. Obviously, that's the goal.
I think that concurs with management's responses to both as well. They are in process of resolving them.
And they use an antiquated, historically system that they're glad to change out.
And then the next 2 are new.
The next 2 are new.
Paid time off?
Yep.
All right, ready for number 3? Okay.
Please do.
Third deals with the condition, accounting for paid time off in the sheriff's office. Officers and certain other personnel in the office work on a scheduled 9.5-hour day. When these employees have taken a day off, their paid time off account is only charged 8 hours. As a result, the office is over reporting the remaining PTO balance of such employees by 1.5 hours per instance. And the sheriff's office has responded that they are going to change that policy beginning March 22nd of the payroll run period.
How do they accrue the vacation time? Do they accrue it in like hourly or daily increments?
I believe do they follow the same policy as Knox County for accrual, or do they have their own policy? I know their accrual policy, we didn't have any issues with how they initially accrue it. It's the reduction part of it that we had an issue with.
I guess I just want to be sure that.
I think there was an answer over there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
The sheriff has his own vacation policy, so we don't accrue based on the hours that we work. It's based on they earn 1 day per month, and then 1 day for every year that they're here for longevity, and they top out at 30 days.
And that's the part, I guess, just to be sure about. If they accrue a day of vacation, or they accruing
Well, they don't
9.5
accrue it
or they-
based on their hours worked. Like sick time, we
Right.
accrue it based on the hours that we work. It's given to them in January. It's uploaded in January, and it's based on, they get 1 day per month, and then 1 day for every year that they're here.
But for each day, is it 8 hours of PTO, or is it 9.5 hours of PTO?
So right now, it was 8 hours
So they were
of
accruing
PTO.
and using 8
Right,
per day. Okay.
right.
That,
Because they're given 1 day per month, so it is 8 hours right now, but we're changing that March 27th.
so they'll, at that point, get 9.5 hours for each day of PTO, but take 9.5 hours.
No, we're not giving them 9.5 hours.
It's the
We're
opposite.
only gonna give them 8. And we're gonna take 9.5, because that's the schedule that they work. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
I got you. I see that.
How long has this been going on?
Since Sheriff Hutchison. When we went to the 6 floors is as far as we can find out is how long this has been
So
going.
does that mean there's a massive amount of PTO that's like
No,
lingering out there?
I think there could be arguments with regard to what patrol officers do that they were entitled, but for internal reasons, we've decided that we are going to entitle this adjustment we've decided to make it consistent across the sheriff's office pursuant to the CPA's request.
Going forward, but I mean, does that mean, if I'm reading this right, could an employee come back and say, wait a second, you shorted me an hour and a half in my PTO days for the last 20 years?
I think it's working the other way around. You're getting more, you got it backwards. You're getting more
That's
time
why it reads
off.
really weird.
Yeah, you're getting more time off than you are being charged for. You're taking a 9.5 hour shift and only being charged 8 hours. So it's to the benefit of the employee. And we're fixing that as of the next cycle. You're right. When our 20-day cycle kicks off on the 22nd, it will not be that way.
And the policy is clear about their accruing a day versus an hour. I just want to make sure there's not going to be an issue of.
There is no issue that I'm aware of with regard to accrual. That's been very clear. The issue, and we've been aware of it, is that there is
It's just the
that we only take 8 hours away on a 9.5 hour day.
The word charge could say reduced then technically.
I'm just overly cautious with anything that has to do with any hours or compensation or anything else. We
went through
almost always ends up in a lawsuit.
Department of Labor a long time ago, and as long as you give them more than they're entitled to, you're usually good on somebody. Nobody's going to sue you for giving them more time off, more than likely. I've seen silly lawsuits, but that one
Well,
take the cake.
I don't ever say anything can happen.
Yeah, I'm not either.
All right.
Questions about?
I don't have any more. Commissioner Jackson, I don't know. Just to catch you up, we're working through the single compliance audit on finding 3 right now.
Thanks.
None, I'll go to finding number 4, for your reference on page 26. Well, I don't know what page it is in there, my report page is page 26.
It's 28.
Page 28. Finding number 4 is a matter that was previously reported by internal audit and from a May 2024 investigation from a hotline matter. And basically, Parks and Rec Department personnel can obtain quotes for a new utility vehicle and trailer. One of the items costed greater than $10,000. As a result, quotes were ultimately reworked between the department and the vendor, resulting in both purchase for both pieces of equipment for an amount just under $10,000 or under the capitalization threshold. The significance of the capitalization threshold is you require additional approvals at that point. So we had
Can I just stop right there? And,
Yeah.
maybe Director Mack has more context in this. Does it concern anybody that it was like reworked to kind of fit under the threshold?
It's part of the,
That's what I talked about.
Okay, all right, so this is, all right, you ran through it very nonchalantly. I'm like, ooh, wait a second.
No, I
Didn't mean to.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I think it. Go ahead.
The sequence of events resulted in multiple purchasing issues, included purchase documentation signed by department personnel without proper approval. Department personnel took possession of equipment prior to approved and executed purchase order, and 3 invoices were altered to subvert county purchasing requirements regarding capital items. So, cause and effect is there regarding really, surrounding altering the invoices to get under the capitalization threshold. We have made recommendations and management's made a response, but yes, it's an issue, and why it was a hotline item that that internal audit did a report on, which audit committee members at that time received, and also proper communications were made to Knox County officials and to the state of Tennessee as required. So the detail of this would be in that special report, which is a confidential report because there's some personal matters in there. But this is kind of the overview overview of the issue, and we felt compelled that it was necessary to report this, particularly because of the invoicing involved.
I was gonna say, just remembering the internal audit report you're referencing, was it only called because of the whistleblower? I thought it was because of there was a catch in the control bit.
It was finance department personnel that noticed it, brought it to our attention. We did a full investigation on it. This would have been June of last year when you guys saw the report. So for the new commissioners, you would have been here at the time, but we covered that in executive session in June.
Is that still with the comptroller?
So my report basically becomes part of their record, and I think the way it worked is maybe the comptroller tells Ted then that it has to be part of his report. I don't know that
The comptroller tells me that we need to consider it. They don't require it, but then either I should include it or explain to the comptroller why it's not necessary to. But in this matter, it's notable enough from our perspective to include it.
So I think you said earlier that this is still confidential?
There are aspects that are confidential, personnel involved, but
But is it an active investigation still, or is it done and gone? Like, is the comptroller finished?
They have not indicated to me that they are finished with it.
Okay.
I guess you could consider it active until we've received final word from them.
Do you mind explaining to me what exactly they were doing? Because they altered the invoices to get under a required amount.
they were seeking to buy two pieces of equipment. One of them was greater than 10,000, the other was under 10,000.
What type of equipment was this?
A new utility vehicle and a trailer.
Okay.
So those are the two vehicles that they were purchasing. And that's the condition.
You wanna?
Sure, I can add to it. Basically it was being overzealous, and the two people that were responsible for the way this whole thing transpired have been disciplined. One's no longer with us, the other has been demoted. There was a trailer and a utility vehicle. When the quotes came in initially, they were the only ones that really saw the dollar amounts, and they tried to manipulate, along with help from the vendor, to get the price under that $10,000 amount so they can be purchased.
I think it's important also to note that the vendor has been removed from the approved vendor list for Knox County.
Have we done any audits of past transactions of these same folks to see if this was a recurring thing that they did?
We have tested several transactions in the Parks and Rec before, and there was a different matter maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but not this specific matter.
I'd say if you want to come and see the details of my report, maybe you could come to my office and review it. We've internally kicked around maybe having some sort of review for transactions that are just below the capitalization threshold. Show the, like it seems like someone might be doing something. So that's a process that we'll look at going forward.
We've also conducted, in the month of June, we do a monthly training. We did training specifically to this, and also reduced the number of personnel that had credit cards. So, and I have copies of the actual policy that we put in place, along with a diagram that each the purchasing decision tree that we put in place to prevent this from happening in the future.
Like butchers.
Is this to go around the room or?
Yeah. Any additional questions on finding number 4?
I guess that'll be continued discussion next year.
Certainly, follow-up on it will be, we will include concentrated testing of transactions in Parks and Rec. And there's no telling what the state timeline will be. Sometimes they jump on something and sometimes they don't, so. But, of course, they're dealing with many things from many places, so that they basically do it all on a priority basis.
Sometimes maybe I hear things through meetings we've had or executive sessions. So I know I had some awareness of this, but is this, has this gone public yet on number 4?
I don't know if it's gone public, but it has been recorded to the Audit Committee.
Not quite the same.
Any other questions on 4? They've already talked about pages 28 and 29, which are PDF 30 and 31, summary schedule of prior year audit findings.
Is the first one on here the trustee's office?
The first one, there's the trustee's office, yes.
Do you guys have any new processes in place since it's been around for a couple of years?
If the process is in place, is reconciling, and it says manual integrated with Excel. First Bank, our bank does not offer a reconciliation program. So the banking system has sped up, and that's from the trustee side. We don't do positive pay files, so therefore our checks are issued individually by which account we issue them from, which we have 7 or 8 accounts that checks are issued from. Whereas finance, they can use their system on the checks because they do have positive pay file, but we do it through Excel and Munis, the reconciliation program in Munis that it has. But the main thing that the question is on the receipting of revenue, which we put it into the bank account it comes into and put it in a fund it's allocated for, which is the department's responsibility to notify finance department where to pull that out and where to put it in their division. So that's the main thing on the fund accounting. The bank accounts are reconciled in the timely fashion, but it's the liability accounts, which are the major responsibility of the finance department.
Has there been any thought about, I know it mentions in the recommendation, automated software to help with the process?
We have checked with that and talking to Perry, that is a unique program set up for Knox County only because we do not use state board revenue codes. We have a 6-digit where there is a 5-digit, so it's usually set up through the Title Contents Management Program. To find that outside source, I don't think so. I know not, but they wouldn't take it on if they did see it.
Why are we on a different coding system than the rest of the state?
That would be Perry and
Perry, you can hide.
Well, we're a charter form of government, and there's 4 counties in the state that can have their own system. We've always had our own system. We're actually one of the counties, that are mentioned with the state that is exempt from their own charter of accounts.
And the charter of accounts that the state issues is really for the purpose, primarily for smaller counties. That's part of the reason. In reference to Mr. Jackson's question earlier, regarding finding number 4. We will have to address it here in the summary of prior audit findings next year. And, the corrective action plans follow this summary schedule of prior audit findings. That's 4 pages, and that's the completion of the compliance report. If there are any additional questions, I'll be glad to take them.
I don't believe we have any.
Thank you.
I believe that covers everything on single audit.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments for Ted? If not, I was gonna say, I know several folks came for this discussion, so if anybody wants to get out of the room, feel free to.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
Well, we're gonna break, at least take a minute to welcome one of our junior commissioners. My junior commissioner is here, has great interest in the audit committee, so welcome Olivia.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi.
Very few people have ever in the history of the audit committee asked to purposely come to the audit committee. If we were required to come to the audit committee.
Let the record
They're not?
state.
Yeah.
Are we moving? What would be the first?
Yeah, we're gonna go to the term audit.
Did you leave the retirement report for that?
Feels like it dropped 3 or 4 degrees after.
Yeah. Chris, you want that? Give a comment on this so she can see what it is.
Okay, with that, we can go ahead and transition to Zach for the update on the city county building space.
Sure. All right, well, good afternoon, Audit Committee. Zach Fullerton, Knox County Internal Audit, so hope you guys are all doing well. Let's jump into the audit report for PBA. So if you'll remember, Lori performed a lot of the work on this, and then Richard picked it up at the tail end. He's out bass fishing today, it's so beautiful, so I get to present it to you guys. If you'll recall, our objective for the audit was basically to determine whether PBA is effectively allocating, managing, and tracking space in this building, and assess if needed renovations are being identified and performed in a timely manner. So for the audit, we had 3 findings, 1 significant risk area, and out of that we made 3 recommendations for PBA, 1 recommendation for Knox County Executive Management. So if you'll turn in the report to page 1, this is just a little bit of background about PBA as an entity in the city county building. You know, PBA's got a ton of responsibility. They manage basically over 2 million square feet of buildings for the city and the county. They have over 200 employees. And essentially they've got 3, sort of very, very high level responsibilities that's in the graphic there. Management of construction projects that are requested by the county or city, maintenance of current facilities and grounds for the properties that they maintain, and then management of the telecom systems in those locations. And ultimately, what does that lead to? Well, it's a consolidated venture between the county and the city that leads to some shared costs and taxpayer savings. So one thing I found interesting that I did not know before this audit is that PBA's budget is sort of a collaborative process, right? They meet with the county and the city, determine what level of service is wanted from those municipalities, and that's how the budget gets set. But if there is any funding that's budgeted to them that they do not utilize, it is returned to us at the end of the year. So I just thought that was interesting. There at the bottom of that is a picture of the building, in case you forgot what the building looks like that you're currently sitting in. Let's turn over to page 3, and this just sort of gives you a high-level overview of what we tested. So there were sort of 4 major testing areas. First, we looked at the Knox County PBA contractual relationship. What's that looked like over the last 40 years, and assessed whether those contracts are sort of up to date and meeting current needs. Then we turned our attention to the actual office space. So PBA maintains documentation of who is where in this building, so we wanted to see how often is that information updated, is it communicated to Knox County timely, how accurate is it? Third, we looked at parking in this building. Parking is a bit of a point of contention. A lot of employees park at Dwight Kessel and walk up. So we tested some samples of employees, 42 on a statistical sample, 35 on a judgmental sample, just to see, basically verify the parking documentation, verify eligibility to park here. And then lastly, we did some review of the maintenance efforts for the city-county building. So we sort of looked at PBA's method of identifying needs, prioritizing needs, communicating that to the county, and then looking just at documentation of what still needs to be done. So that's your background. Let's flip over to page 4, and we'll get into the first issue. And this is really probably the most intensive issue to discuss. But this revolves around the contract relationship between PBA and Knox County. So if you'll look at that graphic there on page 4, PBA and Knox County originally entered into an agreement in July of 1975. So you have your original lease agreement and your original operating agreement. In 1977, a new agreement was entered with new bonds issued that refunded the 1975 bonds. So we have the first supplemental lease agreement and a restatement of the operating agreement. Then in 1993, the 77 bonds get refunded with a new issuance of bonds. So at that time, the parties put forth a second supplemental lease agreement and restated and amended our operating agreement. And that took place in June of 93, and that was the last time the contract documents have been updated or executed between the parties. So a little over 30 years since we've had new agreements. So what's the contract situation now, right? Well, the agreements are automatically renewing on a year-to-year basis, so we're at least covered, by an agreement. That said, it's our opinion there have been a lot of operational changes over the last 30 years, as you can imagine, that we believe necessitates a new operating agreement. Additionally, the original agreements had an interesting provision, and it basically allows the city and the county to jointly terminate the lease agreement when any underlying bonds are paid in full. So all of the underlying bonds were paid in full in 2001. So the city and the county have the option to terminate the lease agreement. Well, what does that mean? Well, right now the title for this building rests with PBA. If the county and the city determine that's the path they want to go down, we want to terminate the lease agreement, that title would revert to the two municipalities. So we do have that ability. In 2022, there was some movement on the contracts. The finance department and the law department began working together, realized, hey, it's been a long time since we've updated these. Let's put together a new operating agreement and let's go ahead and terminate the lease agreement. So in April of 2022, the lease termination was drafted by the law department. In September of 22, a new operating agreement was drafted by the law department. Well, what happened? The documentation was transferred to the city's law department, and the city never acted on either agreement. So because there was no action taken, conversations have basically just stalled at this point. I would say I'm a big contract guy. I think contracts are best practices. They should exist to lay out all aspects of ownership and operational responsibility. And then those contracts should be updated routinely, every 5-10 years, certainly not 30 years. But I think what has really stalled these changes from occurring is a couple of things. Well, the county and the city have a really great working relationship with PBA. I should have mentioned Jane's here from PBA. We all love Jane. We all love working with her. Haven't had any issues so far, right? But of course, internal audit, we live in the world of what if, right? What if Jane leaves? What if something goes wrong and that relationship becomes fractured, where the collaborative approach sort of falls to the wayside? Let's get ahead of that now and formalize some new agreements. Do we have to terminate the lease? No, we don't. We can execute a new agreement that extends the lease and a new operating agreement that sets out our current operational practices. That's going to be up to County Commission and the City of Knoxville City Council. So our recommendation to PBA really is just to be an open and willing partner in those discussions. And then for our commissioners, I would just say, push the issue, don't let this fall to the wayside. I do think this is important. Let's get it corrected.
You mean don't let it expire before their term has expired?
Well, any questions on that? If not,
I don't know where this is going to end up. It'll be interesting. Is anybody seem inclined to grab a hold of this and then see that it moves forward? And I know it's not you guys or us, but
I would say that I attempted to converse this issue with the city. Got a little bit of the lines of communication were not open for me at the time, so wasn't able to get an ear there. But the agreements, the new agreements already exist. They've already been drafted by the law department. We just need the parties to come to the table. So it's not a big ask we're asking for.
I had conversations with David Brace, Chief of Staff of the city, Friday and today, and I think they were open to having that conversation. I don't know why, but under city law. So I think the easy answer is yes. I think David and I can sit down with Jane and we can come up with a contract. I mean, we have, as he mentioned, an annual contract every year, so I don't think we'll have an issue coming up with a new 5 or 10 year deal that the city and county are content with.
Just one question. Is the current lease contract and operating agreement fair to the county?
That's a loaded question. Fair is a tough word. I think it's fair in terms of it lays out the shared responsibilities. But now it doesn't get into like pricing or how much is going to be charged for specific services. So those are things that could be in a new operating agreement. How much is PBA going to charge us for painting a room? Well, now it's sort of a collaborative set between PBA and finance. As I said, I want that in a contract, and let's say for the next 5 years, here's what we're going to agree to price-wise.
Is everything else a 50-50 split?
It's based off square footage of the building, which is about 70-30.
And that really hasn't changed.
70 county?
Mm-hmm.
Does that include the sheriff's spaces? Or is the jail separated?
No, it's part of it.
So the 70-30 also is the common area as well?
No, common area is not in that.
But do we split the cost of the common areas?
We do.
You do, yes.
And I just say on that one last thing, I think PBA's perspective is not to terminate the lease agreement, and there could be legitimate reasons for that. From a liability perspective, if something happens in the building, maybe that currently could fall on PBA. I'm not a lawyer, I just play one here, but if you split it out and the county and city both have responsibility, those two municipalities don't always work super well together. So having an intermediary such as PBA could be a good thought, but really we just need to come to some sort of determination and create new agreements.
All right. So out of all of this, I think I remember people squawking about why their group didn't have more parking space. Did that get resolved?
Not so much. I mean, that's laid out pretty succinctly in the contracts of how many spaces are going to go to each jurisdiction. And we did do some parking testing, which I'll get into in just a second.
And for example, if people that have been in this building end up at Summer Place, is that what it's called? Does that change the parking space allotment?
Well, I think that the parking space here would just go to maybe stay with
the other entities here. We kind of keep a waiting list of who's online for it, and you have to have someone in your department to take that spot. So it would stay the same. But if groups from here did move, that would open up some more.
That's it.
On to the second issue, which is on page 7. So this relates to inconsistent office space allocation records. So PBA maintains the office space map for the city-county building. You can see the image there on page 7. which is actually, I believe, the 6th floor of this building. So there we are in the white in the Knox County Commissioners conference room. Why is this important? Well, finance receives this map annually, and that's how they determine to allocate space costs out to the other departments. So we basically looked at the map, we identified 32 county departments, and of those 32, we talked to the department heads for each of the departments. 18 were correct, the space was correct on the map, 14 were incorrect. So, half and half almost. I think it's really a two-way street, though, is this issue. One, PBA, in our opinion, needs a dedicated process to get this map updated annually into finance. But some of the onus is on the county as well. The county has to communicate to PBA when office space changes hands between departments or between the county and the city. And so that's why for this issue, we've got really a two-pronged recommendation. One for PBA, just establish a dedicated procedure to update the map, and then one for executive management, which we sent to Chris as the chief of staff, basically to provide a method to the county departments to let them know when space changes hands. Questions on that issue?
How updated were they? Like, are we talking like an office change or like they were 5 years ago?
No, nothing structurally, just office changes. We were one of them. Internal audit moved to the 6th floor. We used to live on the 3rd floor, but on the
You used to have a courthouse in the vault over there. This is what they gave you first time around.
Right. So, just I would classify those as small things, though. But it's just important from the finance perspective of when they're divvying out those costs, we want it to be as accurate as possible.
We do those annually, but we will make an effort now to go to each department and speak to the department head and ensure that they are happy with those plans as well. We have someone go around and check the spaces and identify, but I think we need to get leadership involved.
Okay. The third issue is on page 9, and this relates to the parking garage permits and access management. So, as I mentioned, we pulled a statistical sample of 42 and a judgmental sample of 35. We looked at a few things. One was, were the permits tied to an active employee or someone who's basically an authorized user? Did the access to the garage align with the original form that was filled out by the employee? And was each permit application basically complete, accurate, and authorized? So you can see our results there in the chart, but overall had 5 employees who still had access to the garage but were no longer affiliated with the county. But also a lot more instances there on the middle row of the PBA parking form just not being present. So look, the parking database is a really fluid system. There's people coming onto it and moving off of it quite frequently. It requires accurate communication from county HR, the sheriff's office HR, elected offices. There's a lot of voices that funnel through access control and PBA. So it's really difficult for PBA to maintain an accurate list. They don't always get notified when someone leaves or someone joins. We did during the course of the audit actually ask Knox County Payroll to send just sort of a list of personnel actions from each month to PBA, so I think that will lead to some improvement. A couple other things we noticed, just sort of a lack of a standardized form. Saw a lot of variation. Some elected officials, and I won't name names, but they, rather than fill out the form, just shoot an email, hi, access control, Joe needs access to the garage. Well, what we would prefer from internal audit's perspective is for them to fill out the form, go through the correct process. But PBA is in a tough position. How do you write back to an elected official and say, no, we can't do that, fill out this form, we can't allow
Just
that.
write back to the elected official, fill out the form like everyone else.
Sure.
I mean, seriously.
That's what I would
I think,
expect.
yeah, the new form.
If that's an issue, then
Right.
we have the wrong elected officials. I'm sorry, I mean, come on.
I think we revised the form to add a signature, but I think part of the problem is the form is given to the employee when they're in their first day, their orientation. So then they come down with their form to give the parking. And if we don't have the supervisor's signature, we're gonna have to trace that down. So part of
Could this not be done
delayed.
online in some capacity?
I mean, if that's acceptable.
I mean, I
We're
don't-
trying to get the form.
It's a database, it's, who signed off on it,
There'd probably be some electronic way.
We can't be the first county in the city having a parking management issue with passes, I mean.
Sure, I'm trying to give, obviously, credence to PBA, and I do think they have a tough job, but our recommendation was create a formal policy that we can hold people accountable to. I always say, for the most part, elected officials change, policies don't, or they should not drastically change, right? So, yeah, put a policy together, hold them accountable, and then also maybe just do some routine accuracy checks of that database, which the PBA is doing and is going to continue to do.
It doesn't sound like we have a policy problem, it just sounds like it's a procedural issue.
It's tough. I think in the county, in a lot of instances, we have procedures that are not written down into a policy. So, there's a distinction there, right? If you don't write it down, here's exactly how you do it. And then when that elected official says, hey, I need access, you send it back and say, oh, we've got this commission-approved policy that says we got to have it this way. It's easier to circumvent a procedure than a policy.
Well, it sounds fairly innocuous, however, that also gives somebody who's been terminated, access to a building at all 24 hours a day, and that's a real safety issue. This is a pretty, to me, that's serious. If somebody's had to hire and let go of some people before, you've got a checklist of everything that has to be done, so I'm kind of, makes me question, are we taking them off the computer system? Are we, what else are we doing?
Does HR have some sort of policy that locks them out of the building and the computer files and all that?
Well, for all of our IT systems, that would be Zach Webb's group. They are definitely on top of that. We will rescind all of their access from the IT networks. As far as the building, garage, all of that's going to flow through PBA. So, when I have an employee who leaves, I am responsible for, sending an email to access control to let them know. But I just do that because I know to do that.
But HR doesn't, HR is probably the one person that's going to be involved with every firing.
Well, and then that's sort of where I got to the payroll. We asked payroll to send a list of personnel actions, which should, I think, capture all of that, new hires.
Payroll should capture all that, because ultimately that should be the end thing that gets done is termination out of the system from a payroll standpoint. So if that's going to access control, then they should then know to terminate
and then,
access.
What do you do about someone who is county affiliated? So, and I don't want to throw Ted under the bus, but one of the, I guess I will. One of the 5 was a former auditor that they had used during the previous year, and they needed access at the time. It just wasn't rescinded when that person's no longer with them. So that won't funnel through HR because they weren't getting paid through us. It's on the responsibility of these county adjacent organizations to let Jane's group know.
Or put a timeline on it of we're gonna have in the system, you have 6 months of access, and then your pass doesn't work or something.
We go a year, right?
A year,
now,
yeah.
A year, so we.
But you didn't find anything, this is all management and nuance of trying to make the system better, but you didn't find any hey, 30 people still have a pass and only show up on game days on fall, stuff like that.
No, nothing nuts. So if we'll turn to page 11, the last item I want to cover, we've never had one of these before. It's what I deemed a significant risk area. It's not really a finding. It's not an opportunity for improvement. Really just something we want Knox County Commission to be aware of. So what we did is we looked at maintenance documentation that PBA had available. The first thing I want to mention here is the image, and that comes from the Facility Master Plan, which was created in 2018. It's detailed a lot of the major projects that need to be done to sort of modernize this building. So you've got HVAC, you've got window repair, you've got ceiling system repairs, restroom renovations, a lot of things listed there. And some of the things that are listed there, PBA has accomplished. So the total facility elevator repairs, that's been done. Some ceiling replacements have been done on some floors. But at the time, in 2018, all of this work to modernize was estimated at $25.89 million. So obviously, that's pre-COVID. Materials and labor have not gone down since then. They've only gone up. There's been other reports created. One we reference is the train report, really highlighted a lot of the same issues, HVAC. Anyway, all of this information has been reported to the county and the city, but basically the decision has been made not to fund the renovations due to financial concerns. So, you know, I guess what I would say is at the end of the day, our opinion is that PBA has done their due diligence. They've completed work where they can, and they have adequately communicated issues where they see them. I would say that, you know, as someone who works in the building every day, it generally serves what we need it to serve. Are there restrooms that I avoid? Yes. Do I run my space heater all day? Yes. You know, but one day these items will no longer be optional. And, you know, we really just need to plan for the future now in order to maintain the asset's value and functionality. So no recommendation here, but again, this is just for primarily the county commissioners, but everyone to keep in mind there is sort of a big expense floating out there that one day will come to roost. Questions on that? The next few pages, just boilerplate language and then the management responses. Look, Jane and her team at PBA, really great to work with. We came to agreement on all the recommendations, and so PBA's making improvements where they can and have already started doing so. So thank them for their helpfulness.
Anything else? Good. The more formal internal audit update.
All right.
You get public review?
Yeah, I'll lose my voice.
Jane, did you have anything to add?
Thanks, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I used to sit on the board for PBA, and I can assure you that there is so much that PBA does that we have no idea about. Jane's team does a phenomenal job.
Just can't let Jane retire.
She told me 2043, so.
I'm marking that down, Shane. 43.
All right, well, let's move forward into your board packets. Of course, we just met 5 weeks ago. Not a ton to update you guys on, but if you'll flip to page 1, you'll see our closed and ongoing projects. Obviously, closed out the PBA audit. Everything else is still ongoing. We've had really good movement on both of our open audits in the last couple of weeks. Harrison and Nathan are in the process of finalizing a lot of the work papers on the KCSO fleet audit. I think we've got all the information we need in terms of vehicle maintenance, vehicle accidents, driver safety, eligibility, maybe a little bit more testing on asset accountability to do, but really should be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. So everything's moving well there. We'll absolutely have that report ready for you at our next meeting. The payroll audit, we're much earlier in the workflow on that one. Had to spend a fair amount of time just sort of wrapping our heads around the understanding of controls. And if you remember on this, we started on the compensation study side. So Jennifer's here and her team have been really responsive to our requests. So it's just a complex topic that we've got to spend a good amount of time with, do our due diligence. But I think what we might explore is maybe splitting that audit into a compensation report and a payroll report. I'd just say here in March, I think it's a little too early to make that call, so stay tuned. And then just wanted to speak on our initiatives really briefly. The first one there, I mentioned the updates to the Yellow Book a couple of times, and I'm sure this is boring for everyone except for me, but the changes to the Yellow Book are really going to update our internal operating procedures. So the updates were focused on installing a system of quality management rather than what existed before was quality control, so it all sort of functioned on the back end. Quality management is something you think about through the entire audit process. So what does that require us to do? Well, in our internal operating procedures, we have to set out quality objectives, we have to set out risks to those objectives, and then we have to set out planned responses to those risks that we would implement in an engagement. So a lot of changes there. I've done a lot to update that manual, revise some of the back-end quality assurance processes and some of the new, have a new planning file on the front end about quality management. Once everything's final, I'll get a copy of that out to you guys. I'll touch on the risk assessment in a minute, but if you flip to the next page, just some general updates. Wanted to take a minute just to welcome Shelby Davis, our newest staff auditor. Shelby's a LMU law graduate, and she was in the General Sessions Court working with them. So an internal transfer, which is always nice, but really just very grateful to have her, and she's going to be working with Philip on the payroll audit. Dynetics on our IT engagement, things are moving there. We remember they're going to be looking at the internal controls over the school's version of Munis. And we finalized a work summary and purchase order. We had the kickoff meeting last week, so things are progressing well there. A few just other items. The charter and county code updates that this committee approved last meeting will be on the commission agenda for March. So keep an eye out for those. Shout out to Jill and the law department for helping me get those in resolution format. She's been great. We've got some trainings coming up. Just want to quickly mention, Richard and I are going to be attending the Association of Local Government Auditors annual conference. Philip is going to be part of the READ technique of investigative interviewing in April, and Harrison studying for the CFE. So, Certified Fraud Examiner. Just things that we really push is continuing education, and love to see the staff taking advantage of that. Everyone will be in the next year's cohort for the CCFO. I completed the program finally last week, so.
Thank you, John Sutton.
You get new admissions
The legend lives.
And then imagine what an auditor's conference is like.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
Awesome.
That's moving for that.
It is. And then there's the last note there about the Association of Local Government Auditors. I thought it was really interesting. They put out that 2024 benchmarking survey. The results from that, it's just a range of qualitative and quantitative insights into other local government audit organizations. They serve well over 300 local government audit shops across the nation. And so if you're ever interested in how we compare budget-wise, salary-wise, audit report numbers, risks, you can look at that information. It's in your email. I didn't print it out. But,
summarize that.
Well, I think we outperform other audit shops personally. I think from a budget perspective, we fall in the medium-sized category, which is 6 to 10. So we have 6, so we're at the very front edge of that. I think budget, maybe we're a little bit lower than other jurisdictions. Salary, some of our positions, the manager and lead position, are right on the average. The CA, Chief Audit Executive is what they call it. That's a little under, and Staff Auditor is a little under salary-wise. But the way we do things are just totally built around what the Yellow Book requires and what August best practices are. So I'd put our shop up against any other shop in the country. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, so if you'll turn to the next page, just wanted to socialize this. This is the list of departments and individuals that we're going to be meeting with as part of our FY26 risk assessment. So remember, we do a risk assessment annually. We meet with several departments, sort of talk through key risk areas, financial controls, training, policies and procedures, staffing, etc. Last year we hit about 25 departments. This year we're going to hit about 30 across the county, schools, sheriff's office, and county adjacent. We picked this 30. It was really a discussion, a communal discussion among the staff based on things like, did we speak with them last year? Have we heard anything from external audit about issues? Have we heard anything in the rumor mill that we might want to include in our plan? So that's how we picked these 30. Not to say that any of them did anything wrong, but we didn't just throw a dart in the list. There was some method to the madness. I know all 30 of these people watch Audit Committee, so just letting them know now, we'll be reaching out to meet with them. So on page 4, you have the hotline summary. And again, know there was a lot of data here, but in the top left quadrant, you can see our recent cases, 2024, 2025, And then to the right is our all-time cases since we picked up the hotline in 2019. And then at the bottom, which I think is probably the most important, what's happened since the last committee in January. We've had 2 new cases. We had 2 open at that time, so for a total of 4. We've closed 3, and we have 1 that is still currently active. So for 24, 25 total, we've had 13 cases, which again, I know we don't go into a lot of detail here, but those are things that take up a lot of our time to do those.
Is the active one also rated 1?
It is, yes. Yep. All right, if you'll turn to the next page, so this is just our recommendations. You'll see that we have 3 new closed since the last meeting. Those actually all come from the petty cash audit, which we talked about last meeting. So Commissioner Jay had asked for an update during the last committee meeting, and Finance jumped right on it. Without getting into the weeds too much, Finance either basically wrote off or adjusted all of the petty cash accounts where we had noted an inaccurate balance. And then for the 8 accounts, which were operating actually as change funds rather than petty cash, they've been reclassified in Munis. And then the internal control manual for Knox County that Finance administers was updated to add details about petty cash accounts and what would be considered inappropriate transactions. Fixed up some of the numbers actually in that manual for some of the other sections with the inaccurate account balances. So we were able to verify all of those changes either in Munis or by reading through the internal control manual. So we feel good closing those issues out thanks to Perry and Chris. The only other change really on this is an extension to the due date on the issues in our contract management audit. So procurement has requested some additional time to basically rectify those issues. Procurement, Finance, and the Law Department met recently to talk through the issues. It's just really difficult. So there's a lot of different kinds of contracts that the county has. What actually is a contract is sometimes hard to determine. It's just a really difficult issue, and each type of contract seems to have a different workflow. So they're wrangling through all of those issues. How do you get it into a central database? It's a challenge, but they're going to keep working forward, moving forward on it until they have a solution. So that's it. I don't know if there's any questions.
So there's 2 open ones that are due 3/31.
Yeah.
At least one of those seems like it may go longer, just a guess. You have any thoughts as to whether those will actually close?
I think actually, I can't speak on the sheriff's office one because I haven't re-engaged with them, with their law department just yet. The Knox County Information Technology one about disaster recovery will be closed by 3/31. That's IT compliance, which is interesting because I used to be the IT compliance director, so the people I hired created that, and but yeah, it will close. So good news there. I do have one additional really exciting announcement. I actually haven't shared this with anyone, not even the team yet. I just found out yesterday morning, but so annually, the Association of Local Government Auditors, ALGA, they recognize the best performance audits of the year through what they call the Knighton Awards. And so it's really the highest honor that's bestowed by that organization. They basically you're evaluated against peer shops of similar size. So I wanted to announce, we actually did win this year the Distinguished Award for our Knox County Fleet Audit. It's a really big deal to me and to the team. I think it just says a lot. So Richard and I, as I mentioned, we're going to be going to the conference in May. We'll be honored at the conference. Knox County Internal Audit will be in the bright lights there. There'll be a press release. We'll get an award plaque, and the county will receive a letter just about the outstanding work. So I'd say a couple of things. This award has existed since 1995. Since 95, there's never been a local government audit department from the state of Tennessee to win. So we're the first one ever. And I would just say too that the fleet audit, the Knox County fleet audit, that was the first audit I oversaw as director of this department from start to finish. So we're only going to get better, and I'm just really proud of the department and the team. And And thank you to the Audit Committee for all your support as well.
Will you let us know when all that hits officially, and we'll do, we often recognize the commission, and when finance gets a big kudos, and we'll do the same for the Audit Committee.
Sure, appreciate it. Thanks.
You guys aren't busy or anything.
Anything else for Zach? If not, I think we just got a couple of minor things as we're wrapping up. Future audit committee meeting planning. We currently, working with Zach, looked at Monday, June 16th at 2:30. There is, as I understand it, there's commission at 5 that day. There is,
Actually, like
I was gonna say the agenda
3 o'clock.
reviews at 2:30, or 3 o'clock, yeah.
3 o'clock is the
So,
agenda.
Yeah,
I'm fine moving forward that day if that still works for everybody, like 1 o'clock or
That would be
feels
better.
appropriate. Okay.
yeah, I hate rushing through.
Yeah.
We have so much to do.
It'll be June 16th,
At 1.
1 o'clock.
That
Works for me. We can do earlier too if that
So it's
allows
not,
more
it's not
time.
gonna be 2:30.
It'll still be June 16th, it'll just be at 1 instead of 2:30.
One's okay with me, is that okay with you?
That gives 2 hours to work through.
Yeah.
Which location, which room?
I think we probably shoot for this room again. I know it's a little tight just because of the single audit report. I don't expect June will be as busy, so probably shoot for county commission conference.
It's actually more engaging in this room because the other one is like 2 people up here and like everybody in the back, so I got it answer better. All right, audit committee, one people.
This is more conversational.
There you go.
So we will plan on that and we can update when we circulate everything. It'll be at 1 o'clock. And we'll schedule a Q4 one as well as any emergent ones that are necessary during the year. With that, is there any other business to discuss? Hearing none, I'm not aware of a need for the executive session. So I don't believe we'll need
No updates to share, so.
updates to share. With that, we can get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, we can.
Well, that's second one.